Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 9 of our English 3010 online course. I am really excited because today we're going to be talking about your literature review assignment, Project 3A. And what's even more exciting is that when you guys finish this project and submit it on Sunday night, you'll be on spring break! So maybe we can usher in some spring weather by going on spring break. We'll see. Fingers crossed. But in this video, what I want to do is I want to go through your week's activities and get you oriented to what we're doing. I want to look at a student sample to kind of talk through some of the moves that you will definitely want to do in your lit review paper. And I think that about does it. So I'm going to switch over to the Canvas view and we'll get started. Okay, so here we have our week 9 activities page. And basically this week you are just drafting your literature reviews and putting them together for peer review and then finalizing them to turn them in. So we've got a pretty straight, clear runway. Obviously, you're going to want to watch the week 9 video, which you're already doing. Good job. In terms of reading, there are a couple of student sample texts in the sample folder. I put resources folder here, but it's down at the very bottom where all the student samples are. They're named a bit wonky, so I'll show you that in a minute. It's called student sample text needs revision and student sample text successful. We're going to talk about that more in a minute, but read those student sample texts, draft your literature review. You want to upload it to the discussion thread by midnight Wednesday-ish. Again, if it's more like Thursday, that's fine, but I just want everyone to have enough time to get feedback on your final papers so that you can get them put together for Sunday. Read and give comments, submit your final draft, and the last thing to do is write up your reflection journal, which this time around has a portfolio moment embedded in it. More on that in a minute. Okay, so this week, you're going to watch the week 9 video, kind of look through the student sample texts, and start drafting. Try to aim to do that by tomorrow or Thursday-ish so that you can upload your draft for feedback and then get in there and give feedback to your classmates and make your own revisions for Sunday. And then once you get your Reflection Journal 6 uploaded or turned in, have a great spring break. So just to refresh everybody's memory, I'm going to click over here to the peer review thread because I just want a quick review with everyone. This is our third time around for peer review. But remember that you're composing a full draft of your lit review, posting it to this thread, and then you want to give feedback to at least 2 classmates, giving attention to all orders of concern. Now remember, this takes us back to the mini lesson during Project 1. I did a little video about orders of concern and peer review, higher order concerns, middle order concerns, and lower order concerns. So for this project, you want to look for a thesis statement in the literature review. You want to look for how well the lit review addresses the assignment requirements, how well it conforms to lit review genre conventions, and we're going to look at a sample in a minute. In terms of middle order concerns, these are issues of detail and evidence within the paragraphs, how well your peer review friend is using their sources, how well they're doing things like integrating sources and making them talk to each other, transitioning between paragraphs, organization and flow of the overall paper. Low order concerns here would be grammar, spelling, punctuation, as well as the citations. Now, some of us are using different citation styles, so you might need to just put question marks if you're not sure or refer your friend to, say, the OWL at Purdue, just to check and make sure that those citations are correct and complete. And then, like I mentioned, at the end of this project, after you turn it in on Sunday, I'm asking you guys to complete Reflection Journal number 6. So here it is right here. This is going to ask you to do a couple of things. First of all, I want you to reflect here on your secondary research process. And I want you to give your research process a grade, not your lit review. What grade would you give your process? So, for example, if you started right out the gate with the launch text and you were working all of the assignments and maybe you learned something new about your research process or were able to get through it really efficiently, maybe you'd give yourself an A minus. Maybe you put things off or tried to do all your research all in one fell swoop and felt really crappy because you had to look at 150 pages worth of research articles and it was really crappy. Maybe you wouldn't give yourself such a great grade because we're grading the process, not yourself, not the project. Did you follow all the leads you could? Did you have to cut corners because you were rushing? Or maybe you had some pressure from work? Did you learn everything that you could about the conversation surrounding your question or topic? Why or why not? There's no judgment here. I just want you guys to take a moment to reflect on why Project 3A went the way it went for you. And then, once you've done that, take a moment and upload a piece of homework, a draft maybe, your annotated bibliography, something that reflects your learning to your OneDrive portfolio. And then there's a little prompt here. Once you've done that, add to your reflection about your learning outcome. Okay, so now I want to take a minute and I'm going to show you guys where the student samples are for this project, and then I want to talk through the stronger sample. You may ask yourself as you're scrolling down and you get down past the readings, past the resources, here's the student samples. They're in chronological order, so in my mind it all made sense. Project 1, then Project 2, the visualization, the annotated bib, and then these two, student sample text needs revision and student sample text successful. These are the Project 3A samples for you to look at. And there's a Project 3B Ignite presentation that you can take a look at as well. Now, you may ask yourself, Nicole, what's the point of putting in a student sample text that needs revision? There's a lot of reasons for that. Partially, you have to read through the paper to see. There are some things that will probably jump out at you when you read through that paper that will bring to your attention things that you want to pay attention to in your own writing. There are some things that are going just fine in that paper. Strong aspects that would be fine in any paper. There are some things, though, that knocked the grade on that paper down. And I think if you read it closely, it will be instructive for you. You'll be able to notice there are issues at all levels of concern. Higher order concerns, middle order concerns, and lower order concerns. Not drastically, not enough to make it a failing paper, but just enough to bring that grade down into an area where you just know it needed more attention than the author gave it. Now, that won't be particularly helpful to us right this second. Right now, I want to draw our attention to the successful paper because I want to hit a few high points of what this paper is definitely doing that you will want to definitely do in your lit review. So now, before we dive into this paper here, and while I'm setting this up, you might want to open up the example on your own screen so that you can look through it also. I was observing a colleague the other day. We do teaching observations of each other here in the English department, and my colleague was talking about the lit review and said it's like making a cake, which I thought was a great analogy for literature reviews. And she said, when you make a cake, you don't just throw all the ingredients into a bowl all at once and then cross your fingers. what you do is you mix all the dry ingredients together, and then you crack the eggs and the butter and the sugar, and you mix those together, and then you add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. You combine the ingredients in different groups. You start to make an organized sort. You sort them, and then you combine them in a systematic way that's going to lead to something brand new coming out of them. So I want you guys to think about this analogy of the cake. You want to make something different than just a list of sources. If I wanted a list of sources, I would just ask for your annotated bibs and be done with it, right? Because that was a pretty cut and dry, plop down list of sources. But I don't want that. What I want is for you to take those sources, reorganize them, mix them together in a particular systematic way to make something new, which is this paper, the Lit Review. And one of the things you'll notice in this sample here is that this author, she starts out pretty broad, giving some definitions that are key to her discourse community. She brings in a little bit of personal experience, but that's not necessary. You don't need to do that. It's relevant to this student's research that she's doing that. And then she brings it to a really fine point where she notices a gap in the research. So she's setting up this problem that, hey, I've noticed that there aren't a lot of women in this field. I'm a woman. I felt some feelings about being singled out, or I've been treated poorly. There's a gap. She talks about the gap. Then she goes on to really map out what this Lit Review is going to do. She says this paper will review literature concerning this concept, and then it's going to put these two concepts of women throughout history in jazz and stereotypical views of women in the discourse community today together, resulting in the lack of female participation. So you definitely want to say what your Lit Review is going to say in like one succinct sentence. This would be like your thesis statement. What are you going to claim here? Are you going to claim that the lack of women in jazz is not just a result of sexism, but also the historical lack of women in the discourse community, as this student is doing? Are you going to say something else? Whatever you're going to say, you want to say it in a thesis statement at the beginning of your Lit Review. Then you want to go on. This student does a really nice job of providing what we would call a mapping statement, or mapping out what she's going to do throughout the Lit Review, because she's going to take it in a couple of sections, right? The history, the current sexism, and then she's going to pull them together in the end. So do you see how that's like a cake? There's like the dry ingredients, the wet ingredients, and then we mix them together to bring it all into the batter. Now, something else that this student does really well, they're really great transitions. So not just setting up the beginning of this first section, but while she's talking about one particular author, she doesn't just say, Dahl states, Linda Dahl states. She moves on after the first sentence by saying, Dahl also observes. That's a really nice transition phrase. Now, she has a transition sentence right here. So she's going to move on from Linda Dahl into another author. So she says, researchers of jazz history tend to agree upon the masculinity of jazz being established throughout traditional performance settings and the approach to this music. Ingrid Monson describes the jazz community as a fraternity. So this is a next step, right? After we talked about Linda Dahl, now we're going to talk about Ingrid Monson. I want you to notice how every time a new author is introduced, the whole name, first and last, is used. That from then on, you can use the last name only, but you always want to introduce, it's like introducing someone at a party. You use their whole name, then you can go on with nicknames or what have you. In this case, last names. Now, after we have Ingrid Monson introduced here, this writer brings Linda Dahl back into the conversation. So it's almost like you see Linda Dahl says a thing, if they were having a conversation in front of you, then Ingrid Monson says, oh yeah, that's like my idea. And then Linda Dahl says back, yep, I support this idea. This is the kind of stuff you want to do. You don't want to have like a paragraph about one author, a paragraph about another author, and then you never talk about them again. You want to put these authors into conversation with each other within paragraphs, within the broader paper. Okay? This is a tricky thing to do. It takes a lot of practice sometimes, but I am so confident that you guys can do it. All right, I'm just going to look at one more paragraph and then we'll close up this video because I want to be mindful of time. So here's another great transition, despite. So while this writer is asserting some things about the masculinity of jazz here, now she's going to change the subject. So she uses this transition, despite the overall male dominance within the jazz community, many women have attempted to join. So she just got done saying how it's a boys' club and it's totally masculine and a fraternity, but almost she's not trying to contradict herself totally, but she is wanting to say, hey, but there have been a few plucky women who have made it in this industry. So she uses that transition. So, and then she's going to take time, as you see, going through talking about how women both have been in the industry and how they were treated. As you read through this example, I'm not going to go through the rest of it just in the interest of time. I want you guys to see the moves that this writer is making. She's making a lot of sophisticated, complicated moves, but they're ones that I want you guys to model in your papers, okay? Think about your sources. Think about how to transition between authors and how to keep authors in conversation with each other. All right, I'm going to pull us back to our out of the Canvas view, I guess, and finish up this video. Okay, so I think that about does it for this week 9 video. Take your time working through those student samples, and if you have any questions as you're reading through them, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to talk through any questions that you guys have as you are drafting these literature reviews. Please take into consideration that paper that needs revision, just so that you can get a critical eye going, so that you can sort of see what to avoid and what to really give your attention to, as well as looking at the more successful draft. All right, have a great week. Happy drafting, happy peer reviewing and revision, and most of all, happy spring break. I will talk to you guys not next week because we'll be on break. No videos from me, no homework over the break. We will come back in week 11 to get started on our Project 3B Ignite presentations and then move on to Project 4. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week and spring break. Bye.